Good evening, everybody. How are we all? It's Tomatin Tuesday. It's another one of our softer side sessions, and we have got a couple of great guests in tonight. Tonight is going to be a really, really fun show. I've been looking forward to this for the last, well, since we agreed to do this. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I know throughout the day, loads of questions have been coming in. I've got a few questions myself, and please feel free, as always, to ask as many questions as you like in the chat, and I'll field them to the guys. I'm sure we've got a lot to get through today. We've moved to our fortnightly schedule now, and it feels like quite a while since I've last been on doing this, but I'm looking forward to it. I've had a couple of trips down to the distillery in the meantime, so we can chat a little bit about that. We are in production again, which is absolutely fantastic. But on to tonight's show. Tonight's show is all about whiskey photography. Photography has always been an incredibly important medium for distilleries to communicate their stories, and this goes back for 100 years or so. You know, the photos that we found of the guys sitting outside the distillery in 1916, and it's changed through time. And now that we're in this internet age and social media has taken over, Instagram really provides an opportunity for everyone to engage with photography around whiskey, not just the brands. So that ranges from the sort of photos that I take on my phone that are really grainy, but I just like to show them, right through to the absolutely sublime, incredible photos that a brand manager could only ever dream of capturing. And my guests tonight are two of the men behind From Barrel to Bottle, a collective of photographers over in Canada who, since 2017, have been doing an incredible job of capturing just beautiful photos of bottles of whiskey. And I'm sure many of you have seen their work before, but if not, I encourage you to go and look at that now and then come back and join us, because we're going to have a good chat about what they do, about the role of independent photographers in the whiskey industry now, and how social media has really changed the industry. So please welcome Erik McRitchie and Braydon Storoshenko. Good evening, gents, and let me start off by saying, Braydon, sorry if I butchered your name there.
No, you perfect. Waiting for it, but it came out flawlessly, so I'm proud of you.
Excellent. How are you guys? It looks lovely where you are, Erik. We were saying that you've got some great weather there. It's not so nice in Scotland today, but how are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're good, thanks. Beautiful day here. We're in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. It's about 2 p.m. right now, and right around 20 degrees Celsius with just a little bit of a light breeze, so it's beautiful. I'm hiding on my back deck as a great way to avoid my children and drink some whiskey in the middle of the day, so it's pretty good.
Well, you know, it was funny when we started doing the sessions were on Friday nights, and even when I had guests over from Canada or from America, it was still a Friday, so, you know, everyone was feeling quite ready for a whiskey. But you guys have just got the brilliant weather there to enjoy it, regardless of the fact that we're at 2:00 on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
So
weather makes it a little bit easier.
Absolutely. So we've got, I know myself, I've got a lot of questions tonight, and I know that a lot came in over Instagram and stuff. So let's just jump straight into it, and we can catch up as we're going through. But first of all, we're going to talk a lot about From Barrel to Bottle. But before we do that, I'd like to know a little bit more about your background individually. So tell me a little bit about how you both got into photography.
Yeah, so for myself, I started with photography about 10 years ago, and funny enough, it was on actually a trip to Scotland. I had spent a little bit of time in Africa, and I was going over to Africa on the safari, and I'd never really owned a camera before. I'd never taken any photos before. It was kind of before the world of smartphones and, you know, really high quality devices that everybody has in their pocket. And I figured, you know, I'm going to go to Africa, and I want to take a camera, so I borrowed one from my sister. And I got over there, and on the way home from Africa, we actually had a stopover in Scotland. I'd always wanted to come and visit. And so I had about 10 days in Scotland to tour around and do all the tourist things and explore a couple distilleries and do some cool stuff. And I took this camera with me that I had no idea what I was doing with. And I started taking pictures like the whole trip. I'm just firing away like all the time at every little thing that I could see. And I really fell in love with the process of taking photos, but I absolutely had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. And so when I got home, I wanted to show these to my friends and kind of tell people about the experience that I had. And the photos were just rubbish. Like they were terrible, out of focus, and they were, overexposed, and they just were not good at all. And I was both frustrated by that and motivated by that at the same time, because I really did enjoy it and I loved it. I loved kind of pairing together adventure and whiskey and photography, even way back then. And I decided that I was going to learn. So I went to my local camera shop and I bought a little kind of entry-level mid-range DSLR for the very first time. And I just started attacking it kind of with a passion. And every day, just we're taking photos. I was annoying my family and my friends so much, I think, by sticking a camera in their face all the time. And I'd take pictures of anything I could find, like flowers or cars or dogs or, the mailbox in the street, whatever it was. I just really fell in love with the process of learning and started trying to learn and grow as much as I possibly could. And I guess from there, like developed into a bit of a passion and a career. So that's kind of my story, 10 years condensed into like a minute.
Yeah. So. Our story isn't, my story is not quite as exciting as Erik's. I didn't get to go on a massive trip to Africa and learn how to take bad photos of wildlife in Africa. But funny enough, like my experience through photography, it kind of got kickstarted by being family friends with Erik, because at the time I had a couple other friends who were picking up cameras just to take photos of whenever they went to the mountains, because it was the cool thing to do or whatever. And then I eventually started borrowing my sister's camera, who is friends with Erik. And we both happened to be at the same place, at the same cabin in BC. And we started doing some astro together. And instead of having to go through the painful process that Erik did through the 10 years, I got it a little fast tracked with Erik's help. And we started going back to the mountains. And then it kind of just built from there. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So what did you do before photography, Erik? You mentioned that it's now a career. So what was your line of work before that all took off?
Yeah, I actually work in a church for a long time. Yeah,
Right.
so that's a bit of a curveball for a lot of people, but yeah, I was a pastor, so did that,
Wow.
and now I've transitioned to life in the booze business, which is kind of a funny little transition, but yeah, so that's been kind of my journey for the last little while. And I do, apart from whiskey photography, I do a lot of photography for other big brands. So I do a lot of partnerships with large like apparel companies or car companies or stuff like that. That's kind of my main gig, and then the whiskey thing kind of came in as a side project that's quickly turned into something else. So.
Right. So let's talk about whiskey. You went to Scotland. Were you a whiskey drinker before you were a photographer? And Braydon, same question for you. How was your journey with whiskey? What's that been like?
My journey really with photography and whiskey kind of started at the same time. So on that trip was where my passion really for whiskey began. And I had a family friend who lived in just outside of Stirling in Scotland. And when we came over, I was with my buddy, so just two of us guys that were touring Scotland, and we started drinking some different whiskeys. And my friend, who's Scottish born and raised, he's about 6'9" and probably about 350 pounds. He's a massive man. And he really started to explore some whiskey with us and share some of the things that he was passionate about. And at that point in time, I really had no idea what I was talking about. I had no real experience with, especially with Scotch whiskey. And so I was kind of asking him, where the Coke was to mix with it, which is something you don't want to ask a 350-pound Scottish man. Now I know. But yeah, it was really interesting because that's where the passion really started. It really was born out of seeing the places and the people and the passion that was put into the spirit. Like when you understand like all the depth of the history and the quality and the craftsmanship and all the care that goes into it, it's pretty hard not to be impressed. And so so that was where that really started. And it's really interesting to me because at the same point, my photography was just at a very entry level as well. I was just dabbling, I was just learning. And so those two passions have sort of been on a parallel track of growth over the last decade. So that's been a bit of my journey.
Yeah. And then for me, I don't know, I feel like with a lot of young people, you have such a negative connotation with Scotch because if you're at the bar with a friend and someone has a shot of Scotch and you have it there, like, as you know, your palate's not going to be adjusted. It's just going to hit you straight in the face and you're not going to like it. So when I was younger, I was never super into Scotch. So I would say my photography started before I got really into Scotch. But then kind of one of the first times me and Erik actually shot whiskey together, we were up in the mountains watching a sunset. And that's kind of where I realized to appreciate the Scotch industry, because we were all sharing a bottle around and sipping it straight from the bottle and just having fun and taking in the experience. So that's kind of where it started. And then from there, just learning about it, you don't realize how much goes into making a bottle of whiskey. And that's what I try and tell my friends all the time too. As being a younger guy, I have lots of friends that aren't totally convinced by whiskey, and just learning about it and seeing it obviously too. When we went to Scotland, that was amazing. And ever since then, I've kind of been hooked. So
Yeah, I think that is a really interesting point, and I think you could probably apply the same thing to an outsider looking into what you guys do with photography. Is that once you understand the effort and the craft that goes into creating that bottle of whiskey or that photo that you see on your phone, you really get a much deeper appreciation for the product and the photo in and of itself. I just realized that we started chatting and I never even asked you what you've got in your glass tonight. And I was enjoying a glass myself, and it wasn't until Erik I realized we've not talked about what's in the glass tonight. So what are you gentlemen having?
I thought I was drinking alone. Actually, I didn't see you guys having any sips yet. So I've got the limited edition 15, the Moscatel. So I took this guy out to the mountains last night. I was out there doing a shoot and watching the sunset, beautiful mountain lake. I posted a picture on our feed from that shoot this morning, but I cracked that and I'm just sipping on that, which is really nice. And Scott, I heard this guy was finished for 5 years in Moscatel casks. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So that's actually it's one of those interesting relationships that's developed over time. We work directly with the winery. They're a company called Bacaloa, and we exchange casks with them. So their Moscatel wine, they like to mature it in refill casks so that there's not too much tannin from the oak. So we'll send them used whiskey casks, and in return they'll send us used Moscatel casks. And the bottle that you've got there was from, I believe, the first batch of the casks that came over, and a 5-year finish, which is quite an extensive finish, especially for a 15-year-old. So really, really lovely, deep orangey, honey style stuff. I really like that whiskey.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I had somebody ask me yesterday, is it quite sweet? And it really isn't at all. It's quite nicely balanced with some nice spice to it. It's really good. I like it.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I think it's one of those whiskies that you'll find what you're looking for in it. So if you're really looking to pull out a sweetness, you can find it. Or if you're looking for a spice, it'll be there as well. So it does change quite a lot. And that's a whiskey that I love, just leaving in a glass for 20 minutes and seeing what a bit of air does to it, just like you would with a Moscatel wine itself. It's lovely stuff. And hard to find over here now, because it was 2018 that we released that. 2018. So tough to find over here, but I was sampling some parcels of stock that we've got lying in Moscatel casks and trying to decide what we're going to do with those. So there's some really nice Moscatel casks coming through the pipeline now as well, with even longer finishes and sometimes even full maturation. So really cool.
That's great.
What about you, Braydon?
Beautiful. I'm just drinking the old classic 12.
Yeah, can't go wrong with that.
Yeah. It's 2 p.m. So got
I need to ask Bray, are you hiding in a closet? What are you doing in there?
Okay, so I'm working from home right now with my full-time job, and I live with a roommate right now who's also working from home. So yeah, I've kind of went out on the deck, brought the outdoor table into my room, and just kind of shoved myself in a corner, making it work.
Fantastic. Love it.
I must admit, I've done the exact same thing. Restrictions eased here at the weekend, and I had a couple of friends over to watch a little bit of the UFC that we'd recorded, and they walked into my living room here and they saw the shelf behind me and they're like, "Is that where you've been doing all those sessions?" I think they thought I had some elaborate setup, but no, all I did was take my wife out for a couple of hours every week, and it does the job. So,
Amazing.
how everybody adapts to the kind of the way of working with streams and things now. Right?
Yeah. What are you sipping on, Scott?
I'm on the legacy, so like Braydon, just going for an old reliable to start off with. So the legacy and 12-year-old, as I always tell people, there are two real introductory products. You know, these are the two whiskies that you'll be most likely to find, but lovely drops of whiskey, two very different whiskies. Legacy, a very modern style with the virgin oak, 12-year-old, a classic Highland style. So yeah, really enjoying this at the moment. It's always a go-to whiskey for me as well. So
I think I saw somebody today said that they picked up a bottle of the Legacy for £25 over there. Is that about right?
Yeah, that'll be right.
That's fantastic.
In Tesco's in Scotland, we have a listing there, and you can regularly find it at £25. But even in specialist retailers, it tends to be not much more than £30. I know you guys get hammered with taxes a little bit more over where you are, but Legacy is a really, really great whiskey at a great price. Just seen some questions coming in, and I don't want to miss them because they always go past the feed, and I'm not able to. Graham Fraser is saying that he's seen some great whiskey bottle and portrait photos by you guys on their website. Do you see themselves expanding into all aspects of whiskey, like production and buildings? And that actually ties on to another question from Brian Simpson from Ardbeg and Glenmorangie, because he asked, what is the biggest difference between shooting in Canada and shooting in Scotland? And I would imagine having access to distilleries in Scotland is pretty unique.
Yeah, I think interesting questions. Like for Bry, that question is awesome because we had a chance to explore Scotland for a week with Bry, right? And because this isn't home soil for us, he's taking us to his places and the different places that are really stunning and stand out in Scotland. But when we get there, you never know what the conditions are going to be. Like the weather changes so quickly, the light is in different places than we expect, and so it's always a bit of an audible. Like you have to be very flexible as you go, and learning how to tell a great story with a photo. Like no matter what the conditions look like, whether it's raining or snowing or it's getting dark early or whatever it is, right? And so you kind of need to be flexible. And when it comes to Canada, for us, where we get out to shoot, these are like places in our backyard. We know them really well. We know where the light's going to be great. We know when we want to be there. And so we also know, with different and various expressions of whiskey, which pairs well with different environments, right? Like you're always trying to come up with a story that fits the whiskey well. Is it a smoky, real peated expression? And is that going to go well with a pristine mountain lake, or is that better around a campfire with friends? And so we're always trying to ask those questions about, how does this fit the story? And so for us, here we're very familiar with these places, and over in Scotland, it's brand new to us, but it actually is like a great challenge because we really get to take in everything we're seeing with fresh eyes and really be like, it really kind of fires up the creative juices because you only have one shot at it. Like we're visiting all these amazing places. We're hiking through the Isle of Skye. We're seeing the Harry Potter Bridge. I can't remember what the real name is. The aqueduct.
Yeah, I forget that.
Viaduct, yeah.
Yeah. So and we're there for like an hour, right? And so you got to come up with stuff within that time frame. And so it was just like amazing for us to see it and just be creative and just to go and explore it as we went. And Bry was a fantastic tour guide for us for sure. And then when it comes to expanding into other areas of whiskey production, you know what? Like for us, we never really knew where the journey was going to take us when we started. We wanted to fully throw ourselves in with just passion and creativity. We wanted to be collaborative with people and work alongside others, and then to see where it went. And so, if you would have asked us maybe 2.5 years ago, would we be on a softer side session with you here? We probably would have never known, right? And so when it comes to the future, what it could hold for us, like we really don't know. Like we're really open to continuing to chase our passion. We also don't claim to be experts in anything when it comes to whiskey production or anything like that. And so we come with like listening ears, very Canadian, I guess, but we just want to learn and we want to take in as much as we possibly can and keep growing in this journey. And so who knows what the future holds, but we're excited for whatever it might look like.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's something that it's actually a very interesting point. I never considered that, when you're over in Canada, if you don't get the shot, you can go back tomorrow or later in the
Yeah.
week and take it. But yeah, when you're in Scotland, it's a one and done, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that ties into Gregor's question that's come up there, asking, how do you compensate for the dreich, or to put it into normal English, the horrible light that you can often get in Scotland? Do you compensate for it, or do you try and make the most of that? Is that a kind of atmosphere that you can't get elsewhere?
I mean, the reality is like out here, our weather is kind of similar sometimes. So we're like right on the edge of the Rocky Mountains, and literally in any given day, even in the middle of summer, you can experience all four seasons like back to back. So you can go from a beautiful sunny day to snow in July, and you just don't know what you're going to get. And so great photographers can learn to compensate no matter what and shift. If you come with a real specific mindset as far as the one shot that you're looking for with a bright blue sky and a perfect sunset or whatever, you might be frustrated. But if you're willing to be flexible and be creative, you know what, any weather, any condition, any day, there's something beautiful that can kind of come out of it. And so that's kind of how we try to approach it. And honestly, for photographers, like moody weather is actually better. So I love shooting in like moody weather and like more elements and different things that are happening, because it just makes for a more interesting photo. I used to think before I took pictures that a day like today would be a perfect day to go take photos, blue sky, bright sun, and it's just awful for bottles and for whiskey. So we prefer a little bit of mood anyways. So
yeah. And so do you guys over where you are, do you have both of you, I guess, have a favorite place to shoot?
Yeah, Bray, how about you, man?
It's hard. It's hard because a lot of the amazing places that you can go to shoot, like the popular moraine lakes, the Peyto lakes, things like that, I find now that we don't end up going to them as often as we once did before. And I think that's because maybe we've gotten better at learning how to shoot bottles and learning how to work with what we have. But as of recently, like I just like getting in the car, driving out to the mountains and just stopping. If you see something you like, you pull the car over and you get out and you take some photos. But as for like one of those main important mountain lakes, I'd probably say Peyto Lake's my favorite, which is just in Jasper off Highway 1.
One of the challenges we had when we first started is that we did focus a lot. We live with accessibility to some of the most beautiful places in the world, I think. And so we would go out and we would go to the mountains, which is about 2 hours away for us. We'd get up at like 3 a.m. We'd drive for sunrise. We'd get out there and take some cool photos. But people started kind of saying, well, yeah, it's easy to take a photo if you live in like Banff, Alberta. Like it's easy to take a good photo if you live next to the mountains. And really, my whole philosophy from day one was like, you can actually take a great photo anywhere. You can take a beautiful photo in your backyard, in your kitchen. You can take it on a walk and around your neighborhood, like whatever that looks like, as long as you know how to kind of be a bit creative with it. And so we started actually shifting. We'd still go out because for us, it was really about the adventure and the shared experience together. But we would go out and, just around our own houses, try to be creative. Like recently, I came over to Braydon's house and we spent some time in his backyard. We had a fire and we shared some whiskey and we just created a whole bunch of different things around his backyard, just right in that one spot. And some of our favorite images come from moments like that. And so you don't have to be in like a really, really gorgeous, like world known landscape to take a cool photo. It really is possible to do it just about anywhere, as long as you can kind of pay a bit of attention to what the details are and what's around, right?
So have you found that as you've got better as photographers, you don't necessarily need to go looking for the shot as much because you're able to create it a little bit more?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just kind of visualize it more.
It's sort of like a professional painter, right? If you're a professional painter and you spend your whole life like painting walls and painting ceilings and painting buildings, you're going to start to notice things, right? You're going to start to drive by buildings and be like, wow, that building's really well painted. Somebody did a great job. Or you're going to notice like, wow, that's crap. Somebody did not do a good job on that. The same thing is with photography is the more you spend time doing it, the more you start to learn about light and watching the way the light works. You just like, you can't turn it off. So you just start to notice things. Like I'm sure it's supremely annoying to my wife, because we'll be driving and like downtown in the city, I'll see some like light streaming through a building. I'll be like, whoa, that'd be awesome. Pull over. Like, let's go here. I like the way that the colors contrast or they work together. And she's looking at me like, who are you? Like, what's your deal? But it's like I can't even turn it off anymore. And the more you practice, the more you see those things naturally. And then it becomes a little bit easier, because then, what happens for a lot of people is we take a bottle, say we're trying to take a picture of a bottle of whiskey, and we take it on a bright day like this, we put it on the shelf or on a fence post or whatever, we take a photo, and we really just aren't very happy with it. We know it's not great, but we don't know what we would do to make it any better. And so we just kind of go with it. Whereas, for us, we've just sort of learned like certain things that you can do or certain things that you shouldn't do that will help make your photos better no matter what, right? No matter what kind of camera you're taking or you're working with, no matter what you're shooting, just little things that can really enhance your photography. And so it's been fun for us to kind of learn that.
Nice. Now, from barrel to bottle is, I think, one of the things that I think is incredibly unique about it is that there are a lot of incredible photographers out there now using Instagram to share their photos of bottles of whiskey, and we know many of them, and I know you guys interact with a lot of them as well. What I find very unique about what you do is that it's a collective of 4 people rather than just a one man or one woman band doing the whole thing. So how did that come about? How did you come together? I get the impression that, Braydon, you already mentioned that you knew each other beforehand. Were all 4 of you familiar with each other before you started doing this?
I had met Braydon, like maybe 5 or 7 years ago or something like that. We were kind of affiliated with, like, I knew his family a little bit. And then it was through his sister who really introduced us. And what had happened is that I had been working as a professional photographer. I had spent quite a bit of time developing my own brand and my own photography company. And I had this idea to kind of combine a couple other passions. So I was looking at the whiskey space, and especially on Instagram, and looking at photography. And I was realizing that there wasn't a lot of really high quality photography when it came to whiskey. I was noticing a lot of people that had a ton of passion, a ton of knowledge, a ton of connections in the industry, and people that are really passionate about whiskey, but there weren't a lot of people that were doing like a lot of really professional type photography with it. And I started to wonder about what it would look like if we maybe started something from scratch to kind of fill that niche. And for me, it was like, I want to pull a couple passions together. I want to pull some photography that I love. I want to pull some whiskey that I love. And then I want to bring some friends together to do it. Because we all know, like, whiskey is best enjoyed with people. It's about the memories and the moments and the experiences that we can share together. And so it's not quite the same if I take a great bottle of whiskey out to the mountains by myself and sit there in front of a sunrise or a sunset. I wanted to do that with people that I wanted to hang out with. I wanted to do that with my friends. And so at the time I was quite busy with photography. I couldn't do it all on my own. And I knew it wouldn't be nearly as fun to do it just solo. And so when I met these guys, they were dabbling with photography. They were really passionate about it. I had this idea, and I invited them to kind of join me on this bit of an adventure to figure it out. And they were super keen. They were like, yeah, we're in. And we started just going and exploring and sharing bottles together. And we didn't really even know each other before that point, like before 3 years ago, and from that point on, it just really taken off. And so it was really born out of shared passion and a desire to kind of like share experiences together. And yeah, that's been 3 years. And since then, I mean, we've grew this thing from zero to where it is today. We didn't know anyone in the industry at the time. Like when we first started, we started buying bottles that we wanted to try and wanted to drink. We started sharing them together. We started taking great photos, and then communicating with brands a little bit and just talking to people and saying, hey, here's what we're kind of trying to do. And it's really grown. And really at the beginning when we started, we kind of were doing something that not a lot of people were doing. And so it kind of fit a niche at that time. And then it really took off because of that, I think. And so it's pretty cool to look back and see the journey.
Yeah, and I guess that growth, did that come as a surprise? Because within 3 years, and like I say, I'm pretty sure everyone watching this has seen what you guys do on Instagram already, but within 3 years, you've grown from 0 to over 30,000 people. You're one of the biggest, I guess the way to term it would be independent whiskey accounts on Instagram. You're not affiliated with a brand, but you have one of the biggest accounts on Instagram. So that must have been a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, Bray, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, no, I don't think any of us saw that coming. We kind of, the first year and a bit, or first 7 months to a year, we were just posting, still taking photos every day, still posting every day. We weren't really getting a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
We were kind of like, what's happening? Like, these are amazing photos. There's lots of people that love whiskey. Like, why isn't this happening? And then I think we started this in December. And then once we got into the summer months, it started to pick up some steam, and we started to start talking to some other people on the platform and stuff like that. And ever since then, it's kind of just been a landslide of, I mean, not in a bad way, but it's been awesome. Just lots and lots of engagement, lots of new relationships we formed with people, lots of cool places we've gotten to go. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. I don't think any of us saw this coming, but.
Awesome. I mean, there seems to be like a load of benefits to working together. One of them that you touched on there, Erik, was that, you know, you don't have time to commit fully to doing this all by yourself and creating this. So having 4 people taking incredible photos is a fantastic way of getting around that hurdle. How does that work from a logistical point of view? Do you have one person who's the key holder to the Instagram account, or do you all just fire on as soon as you've got the next shot? Do you have a schedule of how you like to put
Yeah,
things out?
that's a great question. Basically, we all have access to it. There's no like secret password that only one of us has or anything like that. We try to really work collaboratively, like with everything we do, and so we're always out. You know, obviously, like the best is when we can get out and enjoy a bottle and shoot it together. That's when we come with the most creative ideas. That's when we come up with the best. We're all quite busy. Like we all have other jobs and other things we're doing, and so we don't always get the chance to get out together. And so what we do is that we're always communicating with one another. When we do get out and shoot, we're sharing those images on our text channel together, our chat. We're talking, we're giving each other feedback. We're coming up with good creative ideas. We're letting people kind of put their own style on it. We want to have kind of one cohesive look. That's been the goal from the beginning, is like we wanted to act as one like collective team with 4 individuals, right? And so we didn't want every photo to look different. We didn't want every picture to kind of be like, well, that doesn't seem to fit. We wanted it to kind of look similar, but at the same time have our own kind of creative bent on them. And so that's kind of what we've been working at. Then we all kind of contribute. We all shoot something every week. We all take turns posting. We all take turns engaging, and to different levels of whatever people are up to that week, we all kind of contribute. And so it really is like a full-on collaboration. All of us working together to kind of build this thing like with one another versus one of us doing it and everybody else is kind of watching. So it really is like a team approach.
So with that, you know, that's really interesting because it everything looks like it's all come from the same creative mind. It's such a well constructed page that you can tell that you guys all work very, very closely to do that. Do you, when you're looking through various posts, are you able to see little nuances that tell you who in the group has taken that photo?
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah, I would say so.
We can tell, but I don't know if someone else would be able to tell.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be able to tell looking at that it was 4 people is the point that I was getting at. But it would be interesting to know from your end, is that's something that you pick up on? That's quite interesting.
Everybody has like a little bit of a different style. Like everybody's got a little bit of a different approach when it comes to the edit, or when it comes to the way that they shoot the bottle. Maybe it's the angle, maybe it's the way that you're involving like a human element, just like little things. But yeah, we certainly have our own style a bit. But because we started out when all 3 of the other fellas on the team were just getting started, we kind of had a bit of a blank canvas. So I got to kind of teach them a bit or train them on, okay, here's what we're working for. Here's what we're looking for when it comes to the edits. Here's how we're working for, like what we're looking for when it comes to like positioning bottles and working with light. And so if we kind of look similar, like that's a great testimony of like the amount of work we put into being together and working on it together, which I think, yeah, is really cool.
And Gregor has asked a question there that is just quite funny: is which one of you guys is used most often as the hand model? One thing very well, and I love it, is the person holding a bottle of whiskey. It's a style of photo that I don't think really existed in whiskey even a couple of years ago. You know, it was
Yeah.
I guess I touched on it at the beginning. The focus of whiskey photography has changed through time, from a photo of the team to maybe a photo of the Highlands to now product led. But now
Yep.
you've got that lifestyle element of holding the bottle. So how did that come about? And is there someone that's hand is used most often?
I would say on our
I
team,
think
Robbie's probably the go-to model. Like
that's what I was gonna say.
Robbie's probably the guy that's most often photographed. So he's either holding a bottle or standing somewhere with a bottle or whatever. And you know what? For us, like, it came back to like the reason why we started as a team, and the thing that we loved was sharing the adventure. It was about us together. And so a bottle in a beautiful place is cool, but you know what's better is telling that story of being on an adventure, being with people, like sharing it. And so we started involving more human elements in our photos like pretty early on, just as a way to bring people that would look at it into the scene to say, oh, that could be me, I could be there holding that bottle, as a way to kind of tag in just like a more emotion to a photo rather than just a bottle that's by itself. And so, yeah, like a lot of our photos are going to be, you know, having some kind of human element in them, and just feel like it more represents the reality of our journey and our adventures, you know, like every time we're out there together, we're enjoying these things together. And so we get people to be involved with us. And yeah, so it's really, that's kind of where it's kind of evolved from. And the trick is continuing to create unique content on an ongoing basis, because like it's really easy to do that for a month, but you know, we just hit over 1,000 posts now on our channel, 1,000 unique images over the last 2.5 or 3 years. So that's a post a day, every single day, coming up with something, some kind of unique concept, some kind of unique way to tell a story, a great bottle, great friends, people together. And so that's just that ongoing drive of creativity and kind of trying to just keep pushing it. We don't want to just like coast. You know, we got to a place where like, we kind of know how to take a cool picture of a bottle. We want to keep driving and keep creating new content on and on. And so that's been part of the journey of inviting other people to be a part of those photos and holding bottles and telling stories and being more of a narrative than just like a stagnant image of a cool bottle in a cool place. So that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic. And like I say, it seems to be that because of that, Instagram and the work that you guys are doing are changing the way that the brands themselves try and capture photography. So I know a lot of the time now brands will engage with guys like yourselves for that sort of content, but even if they're getting a local photographer into the distillery, things like this seem to be part of the remit now. So I guess I'd want to go back and say, so I mean, I scrolled back through right to the very beginning to just to find out when From Barrel to Bottle started. And
Good
what I
for you.
noticed, the fifth photo was a bottle of Tomatin before you were famous. So
Yeah.
what I want to know is, how do you choose what brands you want to work with? And now that you're very firmly under that umbrella of influencer now. So has that approach changed at all?
I think like, I mean, everything started from the beginning. It was like, what bottles do we want to drink? Like, what are the bottles that we personally want to enjoy? Because like, we didn't know anyone. Nobody was giving us any bottles of whiskey. We're going to the store. We're spending our own money. We're buying whatever it is that we want. And so we're going to go and buy the bottles that we wanted to test and we wanted to enjoy ourselves. And then from there, you know, we started to develop our palates. We started to develop our passion for whiskey and what we liked, and we started to kind of trend in one way or another. And so when it comes to photography, like aesthetically speaking, there are some bottles that just shoot really well. They look really good. They just catch light really well. And so those are a little bit easier to kind of work with. And at the same time, we love to work with brands that see value in what we're trying to do. And so we've got some brands that we've shot before, like that we actually love their whiskey. We've got like multiple bottles that we've bought on our own, and we've never really received any feedback from the brand at all. We've never received any like response to the photos that we posted. And it's all been very positive. It's not like we've been like, trashing the brand name or saying we don't like their expressions, but it makes it hard for us to keep really driving those kind of projects forward because we just don't hear any feedback ever.
Yeah.
And so on the other hand, we've got brands that are just like, anytime we post a photo, they're like, oh, thank you so much. This is amazing. Like, we love that you're passionate about what we're doing, like that kind of thing. And that makes it really easy for us to kind of want to keep working with people. And so, first and foremost, do we enjoy the spirit? Do we enjoy the distillery and what they're coming up with? Is it, connect with us personally? Are we getting good feedback from them? Are we working in a partnership and moving forward somewhere? And then that's kind of where we frame our conversations and our partnerships from, I think.
Excellent. And I guess from that, does the photography element now have a role in your enjoyment of a bottle of whiskey? Like, are you able to enjoy a bottle of whiskey without having taken a photo of it now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Bray, what do you think?
I don't know. I think if anything, it adds to the excitement because you're getting a bottle not just to drink it, you're getting a bottle to shoot it and drink it. So there's kind of two things you can look forward to. And obviously, if you have a new bottle that you've never tasted before or you've never shot before, those are also two new things that you're going to be excited about because, like Erik was saying with the bottle, the light hits every bottle differently. So it's exciting to see how it's going to react in a certain environment. And then when you get those photos of it, it's a pretty good feeling when you're happy with the photos that you come out with on a night of shooting. And then obviously cracking open the bottle and tasting it is even more exciting. So I don't think it gets in the way. I mean, if it can sometimes get in the way because there's a bottle that you really want to open, but you're like, I can't open it yet because I have to shoot it still. And a lot of the thing too is we share a lot of bottles amongst the team. So I wouldn't be able to just open a bottle and start drinking it without talking to the team first because it's all of ours. So there's some things that can get in the way, but I don't know. I think overall it doesn't affect how you enjoy your whiskey.
Yeah, we generally like to shoot bottles full, right? And people in the past have been like, "Do you guys even drink these? Like, you're just taking a picture of a full bottle of whiskey." We love. Don't worry, they're all getting drank. That's not a question. We just think it's more aesthetically pleasing. It just looks better when the bottle is full somewhere. And so when we shoot the bottles, oftentimes we'll do pour shots where we'll drink it where we're shooting it or whatever. When we get home, for us, every single bottle that we have has been a part of an adventure. It's been a part of like some kind of memory that we've had together. So we can almost tag every bottle and every expression back to some kind of moment that we shared with one another, which is kind of actually really cool. Because when we know that when we're cracking a bottle, it's like, oh yeah, we hiked to this place, or we went here, we were part of this, and it all kind of helps just the enjoyment. And so for us, like every bottle is really it's a bit of like a visual reminder of like experiences that we've had, and it helps us just enjoy it even more, I think, from that point.
And then the other side of that, I'm sure, is that looking back on the photos in months and years to come is a reminder of also that place, but then the bottle that you've drunk together and enjoyed. So that's really cool. That's a nice thing to have.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a fun part of the journey for sure.
Yeah. So, Braydon, you touched on it there. Do you find that the photography actually builds anticipation for trying the whiskey?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're carrying a full bottle around with you all day, you're taking photos of it, you're looking at it, you're feeling it, it's definitely going to build the anticipation.
Yeah. And Erik, I know you've got a bottle there sitting beside you that you've built the anticipation up. I've even seen a photo of it already. So I've got mine armed here to try with you.
So I've been waiting for a special occasion to tap into this one. So this is the distillery exclusive PX cask. So last year, Rob from our team had a chance to get over to Scotland. He came by the distillery and had a chance to tour it, and I asked him specifically to grab me one of these. And I've been waiting for a good excuse to open it up. And so none of the other boys are here, so I get to open it by myself. So it seems like a great time. It's a good time to enjoy that. So I think I'm going to crack into that. You got one of those too, Scott?
I do, and I was actually with Rob when he bought it. It was myself that took him on tour. So
amazing.
I've now seen two of you with that bottle in your hand. So that's good enough call for trying some.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Look at that.
Yeah, fantastic. Braydon, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay, guys. I'll just watch.
People, so I'm on one Facebook group called Scotch Addicts, and it's quite an active Facebook group. And I was posting a little bit about the chat today, and I posted a couple photos of this, and there's a ton of interest. But I had a number of people in the chat saying this is their favorite bottle of Scotch ever. Like this is their number one, their go-to, and so yeah, I'm pretty excited about this.
Yeah, this is it's weird, you know. We've talked about the role that social media has played in whiskey, and we've touched on it from the photography element. But this whiskey right here is one that through various YouTubers, through Scotch Test Dummies and Aquavita and things like that, has really a bit of a cult whiskey now. And it's immensely difficult to get. You've got to travel to Scotland to get it most of the time. It's now available on our website for the next couple of months anyway, until we can open the visitor centre again. So it is slightly more accessible at the moment, but it's just a very, very unique style to Matt, and single cask with, I think it's 7 or 8 year PX finish. It's
Wow.
outrageously good, and yeah, really, really nice stuff. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago on one of the sessions where our master distiller, Ray Munson, and Gregor, who's in the chat tonight, jump on, and we talked about this whiskey in a lot of detail.
Fantastic.
So what's your bottle at there, Eric?
What's that? Sorry.
What strength is your bottle at?
55.4.
Oh, that's the exact same as mine. We must have got them bottled pretty
Okay.
close together. Yeah.
Cask 34,869.
Yeah, same as me.
Oh, right on.
So
Scott, you're saying if I finish this, I'm going to be able to find another one of these, or no?
well, maybe not exactly this cask,
Yeah.
because
The color on that.
they're 500, 600 liters. There's a lot of liquid in them, but
Oh
as
man.
since we started talking about this, and since people started mentioning it online, we get through these casks pretty quickly now. So this exact cask won't be there, but there are sister casks of it. So
Fantastic. Wow.
and it says it's sold out on the website at the moment. We will need to look into finding a new cask. I didn't even know that, so that just goes to show what's been going on. Okay, so I think a part of what I've found over the last couple of days of getting people to send in questions is a lot of people looking for advice about how to get to work social media, particularly Instagram, and how to build a Instagram photography brand or channel. What tips would you give to people from the management of Instagram side? We'll talk about photography tips in a little bit, but from the social media side, what would you say to people?
Bray, why don't you run with that to start?
Okay. One of the first things that popped up in my head, it sounds corny, but I think being yourself on Instagram is super important, because as someone who's been on Instagram for 10 years now, I mean, it's kind of, I'm getting really sick of all the fake comments and all the engagement and the bots on Instagram, the follow unfollow bots. There's so many things out there that you can use for your Instagram, and it may build your account number wise, but it's not going to build your account with engaging followers that you actually want to be communicating with. So one tip I would say, just from starting your Instagram off, is it's okay to reach out to other people, comment on their posts, etc., but just make it genuine. Don't just comment nice on everyone's photo because you want to have a comment on someone's photo so that they can see your profile. And that translates all the way to how you deal with brands as well. If that's what your goal is for your Instagram account, is just be yourself. Don't expect like they owe you anything. It's a working relationship. So I think that's one of the big things on Instagram is there's so many people out there that can grow followings to 20, 30,000, but then they either don't know how to talk to brands, or they've made so many enemies in the space that no one wants to be associated with them. So that's what came to my head when you were asking that question.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer, Braydon. Because I think everything you put out there on social media is a reflection of who you are. And like, yeah, you can create a persona and a profile for a while, but it's pretty hard to carry that on for a long time. And so it needs to be authentic. It needs to be a part of like what you're passionate about and who you really are. Otherwise, you're just putting on like an act for, and for us, it's been 3 years now. And so it's pretty hard to carry that for a long time. And so, yeah, figure out what it is that you care about, figure out what it is that's authentic to you and to the story that you want to tell, and then make sure that that's a part of it, I think. For us, right from the beginning, like I think Braydon alluded to it at the start, is that for the first 6 months, 8 months of our journey, like we we were nobody. Like nobody knew anything about us. We were like some random Canadians that people are like, who are these guys? Like, what's going on here? And we would meet together. We'd get together and the boys would be like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if this thing's going to go anywhere. Like, it seems like people aren't really that interested in it. And I'm like, guys, here's the trick: consistency. Like, we got to just keep going with it. You can't give up. Like, we've seen this even in the time that we've been around. We've seen accounts that have come on the scene with a really creative, like very cool idea that have showed up and made some waves for a little while, and then they disappear a couple months in because they don't have the consistency and they're not sticking to it over a long period of time. And so for us, it was like, okay, consistency, creativity, and then kind of a unique voice. So we post every day, every single day. We post one photo. We try to take the quality and the creativity to like a really high level. So we're always pushing it as far as what we're creating, and then we're being kind of authentic and trying to tag into what Bray just said as far as being real about who we are and what we're trying to do. And so over a long period of time, those kind of three elements have kind of carried us to a place of growth and a place of like, whatever it is that we are now in Instagram or in the photography space. But consistency, creativity, and authenticity, I think, are really really important, no matter what you're going to do. Right. And no matter if you're going to be a professional photographer with like really cool images, or you just want to be somebody that's going to tell a great story. You don't have to be an amazing photographer to build a great brand. You don't have to be an amazing photographer to have a great Instagram channel. You just need to figure out what is it that you can do well, and how can you be consistent with that and true to yourself. And then I think that will grow. We see some like really awesome accounts that are like massive, that aren't, professional photographers, that aren't like whiskey experts. They're just people that are being creative with what they're doing. And those things are kind of a different approach, right? And that's what's helping them stand out. So yeah, that'd be my advice to everybody, is like what people see is they see a good account that's kind of grown and has become like a successful thing. And they think in order to be successful, we need to emulate that. We need to do the exact same thing. And what happens is that you end up becoming a second-rate version of that whatever that main thing was. And so what you need to do is just figure out what your voice is, figure out what your creativity is going to be, and then tag into that and lean into that. Don't try to just keep doing what somebody else is doing, because you're always going to be second place. So figure out what you love to do it well, be consistent and creative, and then I really believe that that'll grow.
I would imagine as well there'd be a lot of people that look at what you've achieved, and they're sitting there going 2.5, 3 years and over 30,000 followers. I'll do that, and then get disheartened when it doesn't materialize. And I would imagine that a big part of that is that the actual passion for the subject isn't there. I mean, I can tell just from chatting to you guys that you love your whiskey, you love the adventure, so and you love photography. So just marrying the three together makes a lot of sense, and it comes through in the photography that you take. If you're forcing that, I can imagine it's pretty difficult to build the following from there.
Yeah, again, like it's an expensive hobby. Both photography and whiskey can be very pricey, and if you don't care about it and you're not passionate about it, it becomes very inconvenient very quickly. And so yeah, you have to love it. Like you have to find a way to be creative. I'd also like to say, like, actually followers are not everything. Right. Like getting a lot of followers, like people pay a lot of attention to the following that they have on Instagram, and actually that's not the most important thing. Really what is important is being like authentic and being real to who you are. I really do think that. And I know that kind of sounds cliche, but otherwise, it's honestly, it's a dime a dozen to be able to get, a bunch of followers if you do something really fake just to impress people. But in order to continue that on for a long period of time, like that's where it becomes something special, I think. And so people fixate a little bit on the numbers, and I would really just encourage people not to worry about the numbers. Like honestly, for us, that's never really been a driving factor. Like, and I honestly say that even when it comes to likes and performance on our photos, like I very rarely check how many likes, how many comments, how much engagement. Like I never look at that stuff, because I'm just committed to being consistent with it, producing quality work that I'm proud of over a long period of time, and having great partnerships with people. And the numbers, I mean, they're going to go up and down depending on what the algorithm is doing, and like depending on what Instagram decides to kind of promote at one given time. And people can get all worked up about that and be like, oh, my posts aren't performing well this week or whatever. Honestly, don't worry about it. Like it doesn't matter. Just be consistent. Like set your trajectory in a direction and just head towards that, and just keep doing what you love, and it'll come. Like and you need to ask yourself what you're trying to accomplish with your Instagram. Like, you're just trying to get a lot of followers because you want to spread passion, Are you trying to make a business out of it and actually make money off of it? Or are you, what is it that you're trying to accomplish with it? And that helps to drive your direction as well. And because then you're gonna have to kind of pivot a little bit depending on what you're trying to accomplish. But yeah, those are just, I think, some pretty helpful things. Like the numbers thing, if you start to get fixated on that, man, you just get discouraged, you get frustrated, you're putting all this passion and energy into it, you're not seeing the results that you think you should see. And I would just say, like, honestly, don't pay attention to that stuff. Just do what you love and chase your passion. And if you're passionate about something, then you're going to develop a following, and people are going to sense that from you and be drawn to that, I think.
And I would imagine as well that if you are focused on the numbers, that's going to pull you away. If you rely on them, that's going to pull you away from the thing that you originally wanted to achieve and were passionate about, because you start to question yourself when those likes don't come through. And that loosely ties into one of the questions that I saw popping up on your story tonight, and that was around creativity roadblocks and how do you come over those hurdles, because you post a photo a day for 3 years. I would imagine that some points where you're like, now what? What can we do now? So have you had any experiences like that yet? And if so, how do you get around them? And if not, how would you anticipate getting around them?
Yeah, Bray.
I think, I don't know. I haven't had, it hasn't been too big of a struggle for me personally with creative roadblocks. Like, I have experienced them and they haven't been super severe, but what I would suggest in order to get over them is just to get back out shooting, because you can feel so blocked creatively at once, especially with whiskey photography, with one bottle at one spot. You're like, nothing I'm doing is right. I don't like any of the images that are coming out from this. And switching up location and even a bottle, it just changes everything, because you could take one amazing photo at a new spot that you just went to after feeling blocked, and it's going to re-spark your creativity just like that, because it might be an awesome image that gets you super excited. So that's what I would say, is just not to dwell on it too long. It happens to everyone, but just to get out of it, try and keep shooting as much as possible, and try not to fixate on what you're failing to do, and just try and look forward.
I think the battle with any creative is that you're going to have ups and downs. Like, you're going to have seasons where you're really passionate and feeling very creative, and you're going to have seasons where you're doing the exact same thing as you were doing before, and you're going to feel very demotivated by it. Like, you're not going to feel encouraged by it. You're not going to like it. You're going to look at all your pictures and be like, oh, these suck. I'm not happy with any of this. And that's part of, I think that's part of the creative journey. And so as you have your ups and your downs and your ebbs and your flows of like kind of creative energy, I think the biggest thing is like what Braydon just said, is just keep being creative. Like, just keep pushing yourself. Like, and for us, when we're feeling like not really motivated, when we get together to do it together, we're kind of forced to be creative. And so we have to, which is great, because it keeps us moving in a good direction, you know? And I would also say, like, do something you love. Like, feel free to like put down a whiskey bottle and shoot something that you love to shoot. You know, for me, I've got I've got a family, I've got little kids at home. I love to take great photos of my family. And so some days when I'm feeling in a real creative rut, like, one of the things that can inspire me is to just shoot something that I'm like, that will put kind of gas back in my tank, and kind of get me excited again about creating. And so feel free to do that. And, you know, I just think push through it. Every single creative that I've ever talked to has those moments, has those kind of ups and those downs and those plateaus of creativity. And the only way that we ever get better is just to push through those things. And if you need to take a little bit of time off, that's okay too. Put the camera down, drink some whiskey without taking photos. It's okay. It'll be all right. And then when you're feeling inspired again, get back out there. So I don't think you need to feel bad about that. That's pretty standard across the board, I think.
Excellent. That's all really good tips as well. But there's a question from Gregor there, Erik. First taste of the PX, what do you think?
Oh, honestly, it was kind of hard for me to pay attention to what you guys were talking about, because I was just thinking about what I was drinking here. It's just, I can't stop nosing the glass first. Like, it's just phenomenal. Yeah. It was punchy at first, but then it came quite a bit smoother. And then I'm getting just this like incredible smooth taste of like a cinnamon roll with raisins with like some nice butterscotch. Just beautiful. It's like so complex. I feel like I could probably sit here sipping this and talking about it for like an hour or two, but it's a phenomenal whiskey. And I can now see what all the rages about. I'm a little mad that I haven't opened it yet, but this is a good excuse. So yeah, amazing.
It's one that I find that changes as you go down the bottle. You know, I'm about a third of the way into this bottle now, and from first pour to now, it's changed quite a little bit. You know, different flavors. It's not as sweet now, and again, that could very well be, you know, me. That I could have changed a little bit. It might be a different environment than I was last drinking it in. So, super complex stuff, and I think that's the joy of the whiskey, and I guess with the photography as well. It makes you think every time you see it. So, really cool stuff. Glad you're getting to try that one.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I'm sure in time, Braydon, you'll get a dram as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to drive over.
Yeah.
Maybe rob it from him.
Better not leave it too long, because I'm not sure how long this one's gonna last.
Bring it to the cabin.
Either.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Now, photography tips. I'm going to take it from very basic and then start to get into some of the questions that came in that are way above my head. So I'm going to be very selfish and ask for advice for myself now, because a small part of my role is my own channel on Instagram, posting a couple of photos, and I very much see it as showing a behind the scenes look of the distillery and my job, and a little bit behind the brand. But it's all done on a mobile phone. How do you create beautiful photography with a mobile phone?
Yeah, that's great. I think like one of the things that, no matter like what level of photography you're at, is that you default always to thinking that in order to take a better photo, you need a better camera. That's just like kind of a misconception that's out there, is like, man, my photos aren't that good, I should probably go and buy a new camera, right? I had a friend of mine this week who messaged me and said, hey, we've got a new baby on the way. I want to take some better photos of my family. Should I buy this camera? And he sent me a link to an ad for a camera. And I responded to him and I said, honestly, here's the deal. Unless you're going to learn how to use that camera, you're going to spend some significant time figuring out the settings and like the features of it, and you want to really be passionate about chasing it, the best photo that you're going to be able to take is honestly going to be with your phone. So don't waste your money. Like, don't go and buy a big expensive camera thinking that it's going to be better for you, because most people, what they do is they buy a big fancy camera and then they put it on auto, they take photos, and they get the same experience that I got when I went to Africa or Scotland. They don't look that good, and then they're frustrated. They're like, my photos on my phone were actually better. The crazy thing is that these camera phones these days have better cameras than anything that we were seeing like 7-8 years ago in any major DSLR camera. The capabilities are incredible. And so I would say, for somebody that's looking to take better photos with your phone and don't want to buy a big expensive DSLR and go spend a couple $1,000s on a camera, there's a couple real easy tips that you can kind of apply that are going to help you take your photography from wherever it is, whatever level it's at right now, to the next step up. So the biggest thing, Scott, that I would encourage you with is start to figure out a little bit about light and how light works and how that plays into your photography. You know, because what most people do is we don't really even consider what kind of lighting we're shooting with, and that's honestly the biggest contributor to taking a great photo, is using good light. And so what we do is we just take a bottle, we put it on a counter, we take out our phone, and we just take a quick snap. And in reality, as we start to examine and watch the way that light works, we can start to see how light plays with, you know, the angles on a bottle, how it interacts with the liquid and highlights the color. You can see even right now, as I hold this bottle, as I hold it down, kind of like down here, it's just kind of like dull looking. It's not really shining. It's not really like glowing. It's not highlighting like kind of the exceptional qualities of this whiskey. Mind you, if I hold it up here, you see immediately what happens. And so what most people is, they just don't pay attention to that difference from here to there, right? So we take a picture here and we're like, it looks kind of boring, kind of dull. Whereas if you were literally to move it like 6-7 inches up, you're going to get a gorgeous look of the label. You're going to be able to see that liquid shine. It's really going to tell a story. And so learn to use great light. So some of the ways that you can do that. Number one, do your very best to avoid shooting in direct sunlight as much as you possibly can. So that direct sunlight on a really bright day, which maybe isn't a problem in Scotland that often, is your enemy, right? Because it's going to wash everything out. And so when you take a photo with a flash on your camera phone, or you see a photo at a wedding or somebody where there's a flash that's directly on someone's face, you're going to notice like skin tones are all washed out. Everybody's looking like really like white. It's not going to look really good. That's the same effect that you get when you shoot in direct sunlight. And so on a bright day like today, the way that I would take a great photo of a bottle of whiskey is that I would find some shade. I'd find like a bit of a tree that would put some shade on a bottle. I would find, some shade with the sun behind the bottle so that I could really highlight and showcase like kind of the liquid and the color. But learn to use light. If you're inside, try to use a window light as much as you possibly can. Don't shoot against the window because that light is going to be really dark behind the bottle and you're going to have like a really washed out background. So shoot in the direction of the light. So as the light's coming streaming in the window, put the bottle away from the window and let that light hit the bottle to really showcase it. The same thing's with a portrait, put somebody facing the window and then shoot them as they face the window, use that window light on their face, nice diffused light. So great light is going to be really important. That's the number one thing. If you just did that, if you paid attention to the light that you're working with, your photos are going to go from this level, wherever they're at right now, to the next level for sure. So pay attention to great light, use your phone, same thing, no problem. It's going to get better. And then from there, composition is really important. So just start to think about how you want to compose your image, right? You see directors in movies and everything all the time always doing like this, right? And what they're doing is they're framing their image. And so they're figuring out where they want to put the bottle within their frame to tell the story. So for example, the photo that I posted this morning from the mountain with the Moscatel, this bottle, I framed it in a way that you could see the mountain in the background and the bottle was in the foreground on kind of a rule of thirds. So you get a whole story with one image versus just the bottle being kind of front and center and that's all you see, right? And so take a little bit of time before you just start firing away once you've got good light and ask yourself, what story am I trying to tell? What's in the background that's distracting that I can remove? What's a way that I can move my camera around so that I'm going to not get, like we get kids' toys all over my house or whatever, right? I don't want those in my whiskey photos for some reason, right? Brands don't like that stuff. So I'm going to move my camera around a little bit so I can tell that great story that's not distracting and that all the elements of that photo are going to kind of work together. So those are just a couple of real quick examples of ways that you can kind of, enhance your work and, tell better stories. So.
That's fantastic. That's all great advice. Braydon, would you add anything to that?
Erik pretty much covered everything. We were talking about human elements earlier. I think adding a human element can completely change a photo. Kind of like Erik was talking about how he had the bottle on the rule of third and then the complete background on the rest of the photo. It kind of tells more of a complete image. Same thing with playing with the composition in order to have a human element in. It can completely change the feeling of the photo instead of just having the bottle straight in front of you. So if you have people around the house, your wife, your kids, whatever it may be, just having a hand holding onto a bottle can add a completely different element to the photo. And then another quick tip I'd give just when editing photos is not to try and over edit. If anything, just do little adjustments on some of the key things like the highlights, which is like how bright things are in the images, and then the shadows, which is like the dark points of your images, and just changing little things can make a difference. But as soon as you start to get too into your edit, especially when your eye isn't fully adjusted as to what looks good in a photo, it can kind of get out of control a little quick. So
yeah, I mean, the point you made there about the human element, I think there was an element of that in Erik's photo as well, because I remember seeing a foot just in the photo, and
that was my foot.
Yeah,
my foot in it, and I'm sitting like this taking my photo.
It's interesting because Julia, who works on our Kubokin brand, she mentioned I think she reposted it, and she summed it up perfectly. Without that foot in the bottle, that is a beautiful whiskey in a beautiful location. But with that foot, it leads to be in Canada drinking that bottle of whiskey right now. It makes you feel like that is a relaxing environment that you would want to be in, and it totally changes it. You're absolutely right, and yeah, absolutely wonderful stuff. Yeah,
that's great.
So, and then going on to your second point there, Braydon, editing. We'll go back to the sort of photography of the higher level that you guys do as well. But what sort of editing software are you using? You're obviously not just using the filters that are available on Instagram. So,
well, we use Lightroom on our computers, a little bit of Photoshop as well, but mostly just Lightroom on our computers to edit our photos off our DSLRs. But as for mobile photography, honestly, the Instagram app is pretty good. You can get your photos looking a lot better on Instagram. I'm sure there's lots of YouTube videos out there, just little edit tips on Instagram editing. But what we like to do is we like to add some lux to our photo, which is that main little sun at the top of your editing program on Instagram. Another good app. Yeah, another good app that I use at least is Visco. It's a free app that you can use to kind of change all the portions of your photo like you would how we do using Lightroom, just a little bit simpler. And then honestly, I've used the iPhotos editing tool a little bit too. I feel like it's effective enough. Yeah, there's the.
So I'll show you where the lux is that we use. So if I go to the edit, so there's the edit right there. You see the little like magic wand at the top.
Yep.
Hit that little sucker every time.
Yeah.
But only normally go up to like say like a 30 or something like that. So it's like at 30 right now. It just adds a little bit of contrast. It adds a little bit of color. It's just like a nice way to kind of add a bit of a pop to your image. The other thing is that most people don't understand when it comes to Instagram. Sorry, Bray, to interrupt.
No, it's all good.
People always post like a square crop when it's on Instagram. This is the biggest tip, Scott. Pay attention to this one, okay? Because most people don't even realize this. So if you have a square image like that on your Instagram, if you hit this little button in the bottom corner over here, this guy, you see that little like arrow? That is going to expand your frame. So it's going to fill up your whole screen when it comes to your post. So it's not going to be a square crop. People think that when you do that, you're going to have white lines on the side of your photo and it won't post like that. You're going to notice on our channel, every single photo that we post is like a full vertical image. It's going to take up most of the screen. It looks so much better for people when you look at photos on Instagram, but most people don't even realize that you can do that. So literally, it's just this little thing here. Hit it. Oh, sorry. Where is it? There you go. See, it's just going to expand it, and it's just going to give you more frame to work with, and it's going to look a lot better on your channel. So hit that thing, stretch that photo out so it fills up most of your feed, and then it's going to look much better when you actually end up posting it. So,
see, now this is the simple tips and tricks that I've been looking for forever. But there
just do that one thing. That one thing will make it look better. I promise.
Game changer right there. Game changer. But I'm well aware that we have a couple of people watching tonight who are far more advanced than I will ever be, and they've asked a few questions as well, and I'm not ashamed to be reading these ones out, but let me just go for it. So Adrian asked what your go-to settings are in terms of ISO, aperture, and shutter speed.
Yeah, so like for us, there's not really any like magic numbers that we always dial in. It's always depending on the conditions that you're in and what you're trying to accomplish. And so if you want a really blurred out background because, you know, it's really going to help highlight that bottle. You've all seen those photos before where you see a bottle, it's like really nice and crisp and everything in the background is just kind of nice and blurry, right? And that's going to be shooting with like a very, very low aperture. And sometimes we do that because it's a great effect. But sometimes we really want that background to show off. Like we're in a beautiful place with a gorgeous mountain and we don't want to just blow it out. We don't want to make it just completely blurry. And so we're going to change our settings. And so general rule of thumb is we try to keep our ISO as low as we possibly can. We try to use our aperture and our depth of field, which is that clarity on the bottle in the background, to tell the story. And so if there are things in the background we want to show off, then we're going to use an aperture that will help us with that. If there are things in the background that are distracting, we just want to blur out, then we're going to do that. And basically every photo is going to be a little bit different. So there's no magic number really. There's no magic shutter speed or magic aperture. It's all going to be dependent on the situation and what we're trying to accomplish, I think.
That's awesome. And the follow-up to that was, do you have a favorite lens that you use as well?
I'm just
use
giggling.
Different lenses, so
yeah. Well, I'm just giggling because I'm seeing in Scott's eyes the same look that I see in my wife's eyes when I start to talk about photography. It's just a glass over, like, okay, all right, I don't know what you're saying right now, but just get to the point. So
not at all. It is definitely not anything that I am very aware of, but I am here to ask the questions that people are asking. But yeah, no. I'm sure that in time, once I've figured out, my mind's still blown about that little trick on Instagram. So I'm way behind the curve there. But yeah, it's like me talking to my wife about fermentation. It's
yeah, exactly. So yeah, again, You don't need to buy a good camera, Scott. Just keep shooting with your phone, learn a couple tricks. We'll teach you. We'll get on a private one-on-one conversation, and then we'll help you out. But when it comes to lenses, I always take like 5 or 6 lenses in my bag, because I don't know what the conditions are going to be like. I don't know what it's going to, the total environment that I'm going to be in. But I tend to shoot a lot of my whiskey photos with a 24 millimeter. So it's a pretty wide lens. It's going to give you a lot of, you're going to be able to tell environment. You're going to see the background. You're going to see kind of all around. Or I shoot a lot of them with a 105. And 105 millimeter means that it's going to be quite a bit zoomed in. And then that's really going to help really like isolate that bottle and really blur out that background. And so those are, kind of 2 of the lenses that are kind of my go-tos that I use. I shoot a Nikon system. So my camera is a Nikon D850, which is a professional DSLR. And then I have, 24 millimeter, 1.4, 105, 1.4, but I also always carry a 24 to 70, a 70 to 200, oftentimes a 14 to 24, which is a really, really wide lens, and a bunch of other stuff. And my pack is way too heavy once I start adding whiskey bottles as well.
So this is what I was going to ask, because I was thinking earlier on, when we were talking about the difference between working in Scotland and working in Canada was, when you're going on these adventures and you're walking way, like trekking around Skye or walking way into the mountains in Canada there, do you ever get to a point that you get to the place, you get the bottle out, you get your camera out, and you've forgotten something?
I've done that twice.
Right.
I've had that happen, yeah.
One time I was at the top of a mountain for a sunset, and it was a memory card. I didn't have a memory card. And the second time was a battery. So I was missing a battery. I had taken it out to charge it and got it up to the top of the mountain. And then you end up, either drinking the whiskey and drinking your sorrows away, or you pull out your iPhone and then you put into practice all the things we just talked about to see if that's actually real, or if we're just making things up. So
or 2 photographers on YouTube just blagged their way around it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Braydon, I think
the memory card for me. Yeah, it hasn't been as bad as waking up for sunrise in the mountains and forgetting a memory card, but I have been in that situation where you pull out your camera, you're ready to start shooting, and then no memory card. It's the worst.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, that's all incredible advice, and a lot of it, like I say, is beyond me, but as well, very good advice for people that are tuning in. I was seeing as well that Graham Fraser said something that is actually quite interesting. Photography learned a lot from fine art, especially Impressionism and Post-Impressionism techniques of cutting the edge of the image to suggest action outside the frame. And that ties in a little bit about what you were saying about having a slightly blurred background to suggest that there is something else going on there. I was just reading that and I found that fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think photography it's an evolution of art. And anybody who thinks like with photography, with all these fancy cameras, like we're the innovators and we're inventing like beautiful works of art, they're just fooling themselves, because like for centuries we've seen artists that have been telling beautiful stories with pictures. And so photography has been just another element of being able to do that. But so many of those lessons like have been learned from contemporary artists and people that have been creating for way longer than we've been alive. And so just because you have a cool camera doesn't mean that you can take a great photo or tell a great story. And so we want to learn from the masters and people who have been doing this for way longer than we have. And so, yeah, that's a great point. Like, we don't think that we're like innovating and changing the game and coming up with all these things. We're standing on the shoulders of those that have come before us, and we're maybe taking it to a different place because of technology. But we're certainly just a part of the chain, I think.
Excellent. And he's also asked, where is the journey taking you next? And I think earlier on, right at the beginning, you said, you never really had any plans about a sort of step-by-step guide as to where you want to go. You're kind of open to everything. So I don't know if you've got an answer to that. Where's the journey taking you next? But I guess what I'd like to ask as well, in addition to that, is do you have a dream location that you'd love to shoot a bottle of whiskey?
Well, I think for us, as far as the journey, like, yeah, again, like we just want to keep moving forward. We want to keep working with great brands that we love. We want to keep telling great stories. We've had a chance over the last year or so to shoot some like brand new releases for some distilleries as they've kind of come out with new and exciting products. We've had them like months before anybody else in the world, and we've got to kind of come up with the creative to tell the story for these brands, which has been amazing. Like for us, it's been really, really cool, and that's something that we're super keen on doing more of. When it comes to locations, like honestly, we're just all dreaming about getting back to Scotland, and we had plans in place to be back there again this year, and COVID hit, and a lot of things were kind of put on hold. But as soon as things kind of open up, our plan is for the four of us, like to bankroll our own way and get over and to explore distilleries and visit and meet new people and just continue the whiskey passion. And so we can't wait to get back.
Oh, well, if you find yourselves in Inverness, feel free to phone me, and I'll show you some local establishments that you can take photos in.
Yeah, fantastic.
Sounds great.
Well, guys, thank you very much for joining me and for all your advice as well. I mean, it's been fascinating to get a bit of insight into your background, into how you take your photos, and to how you've established this, incredible social media following that is just continuing to grow. So thank you very much for your time tonight. And yeah, I look forward to meeting you soon in person.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks so much for having us
soon.
on and for the invitation to be a part of the conversation. And it was our joy to be here.
No problem. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. Mine's empty.